Hello, class. Today I would like you to meet my father, who I hope you will find to be thought-provoking as he has lived quite an interesting life. We will mostly cover his early/military life and end on a reflective note. First things first, where were you born?
Well, I was born on the Pensacola Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida in November of 1945. My father was a naval pilot in the United States Navy at the end throughout World War II.
All right. How was it like growing up?
It was very interesting growing up with a military father. I'm the oldest of 6 boys that he had. And growing up as a military father, we were all growing up under very, very strict rules and regulations. But you know something? It worked out very, very well, and I'm very, very thankful for it because it certainly gave me a strong foundation to live my life under.
All right. I heard you joined the military and became enlisted in the Air Force yourself. What was it like being in the Air Force?
It was something that I was pretty used to, having grown up in the Navy under my father. I was 13 when my father left the Navy. So my first 13 years I was in the military. Then for almost 5 years I was out of the military as I went through 7th, 8th grade, and high school. And then out of high school I felt that I really wanted to go back in. So I enlisted into the Air Force. My father signed for me because I was only 17 years old. And I went into the Air Force, did my basic training in San Antonio, Texas, and which is the only place that the Air Force does basic training, even to this date. And out of basic training, the Air Force decided that I was an excellent candidate to go into the military police, which at that time was referred to as the Air Police. And so that was something that I really enjoyed. And that was after 8 weeks of basic training. I was then into 12 weeks of both schooling and training, physical training, and certainly training on weaponry also for 12 weeks into the Air Police Tech School.
Did any significant events happen while you were stationed there?
Not while I was stationed, because I did my Air Police Tech training up in Amarillo, Texas. And then I came back down to San Antonio, Texas. I was temporarily stationed at Brooks Air Force Base. And then something very significant happened in my life to which I will never ever forget. Being in the Air Police and being part of the Honor Guard, in November 1963, the Brooks Air Force Base had one of their situations dedicated by the President of the United States at the time. And he came down to Brooks Air Force Base and dedicated the Aerospace Medical Building at Brooks Air Force Base. Being on the Honor Guard, I was there for both for security and because the President was there. He came down after he delivered his speech. The President at the time was John F. Kennedy. And he came down, and I happened, because I was right in front, I met him. Because he was my commander-in-chief, I saluted him. He shook my hand. He asked me where I entered the Air Force from. I told him that although I was not from Chicago, I enlisted out of Chicago because that's where my dad was from, and he took us back there after he left him in the Navy. He kind of smiled at me. I told him I'm sure that Mayor Daley, who was the mayor of Chicago at the time, sent his regards. He introduced me to his wife, who was Jackie at the time. He introduced me to the vice president, who was LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, and his wife, who was Lady Bird, and the Governor Conley, who was the governor of Texas at the time. I met them all. He thanked me for joining the service and for my service. He said he had to go fulfill his requirement to meet other people. I saluted him again. I thanked him, and he went off and did what he had to do. That was November 21st, 1963. The following day, he was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. I will never forget that as long as I live. And unfortunately for me, being part of the honor guard, I was also responsible at Brooks Air Force Base to bring our base flag down to half staff when they officially announced that JFK had died. It was a very, very sad day in my life. 2 days after that, I turned 18 years old. I was still pretty young at the time, and I have no recollection of that birthday because everything was so upside down. All the bases, the U.S. bases around the world, were on the highest alert possible because nobody knew what was going on, what had caused the assassination, if anybody was behind it, if we were going to war. Everything was upside down, and it was really an incredible experience at that time. But obviously, we did survive it, but it was a very, very difficult time for everybody at that time in 1963.
Is there anything in today's world that didn't exist when you were growing up?
There is a tremendous amount in this world that didn't exist when I grew up. I'm 75 years old, so having gone to school in the late 40s, 50s, and early 60s, things like the computers, cell phones, the technology that's in today's world never existed for me growing up. And if there's anything that I think that I've learned, and I think that people ought to understand today, is that I think that success by everybody in today's world is really going to depend upon people's ability to adjust and to adapt. And I see it happening faster and faster and faster. The things that existed from my parents and my grandparents, it maybe took a whole generation to change. Now, in 3 to 5 years, what we see today probably won't even be around in 5 years from now. So everybody today needs to understand that we need to be able to adapt, we need to be able to understand the changes and to work with them. When I first got into the insurance business that I'm in now, I've been in for almost 50 years, I used to have to wear a 3-piece suit every single day. That was standard dress. Then being casual was just a sport jacket and a shirt and tie. Now, everything is just lucky if you're wearing slacks and a sport jacket at any time. Everything is different today, and we have to learn to adapt in order to be successful. And I think that's a real important thing for everybody to understand going forward, because the world is changing faster than we will ever understand and need, but we need to be able to deal with it.
All right.